Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. Sometimes houseplants like this fiddle-leaf fig can get quite large. Now outdoors, these can grow into massive trees. Now, I don't have that kind of space in my home. So what happens when it needs a larger pot and I just don't have the space for it? I'll give you some options, so let's check it out. So just a couple months ago, I chopped the tops of a couple stems here. So this is where I made the cut right there, and it's branched out 3 times and it's produced a bunch of new leaves. And then same thing over here. So that is where I made the cut and it's branched out in a couple areas, and you can see it's just pretty much exploded with growth. Now I'm a little surprised at that for a couple reasons. One, the soil, it's been in the same soil for probably about 4 years. Now it's not compact or anything like that, but I also did add some slow release fertilizer in here. So even though I fertilized, I'm actually kind of surprised at how well it's done in this older soil mix. So when I did the pruning earlier in the spring, I actually contemplated between making the cuts or repotting. I chose to do the prune first just because I wanted to maximize the length of the growing season. But as you can see, it's done exceptionally well considering the old soil. I'm going to be doing this repot inside today just because it's absolutely scorching hot outside and I don't want to get any sunburn on the leaves. So unfortunately, I'll be doing it right here. Now, a couple things before I actually pull it out of the pot, which I haven't yet. So there's going to be one of 2 scenarios, I guess. It's going to be extremely root bound because, like I said, I don't even remember the last time I repotted this, or it's going to be completely fine, or I guess maybe even something in between being really root bound and not root bound. But the first thing that I'm looking for is, I'm just going to tip this over a little bit, is to see if there's any roots poking out the bottom. I did drill some little holes on the side here. I'm not seeing any roots out the bottom. If you start to see roots coming out the top of the soil, then you're pretty much guaranteed it's going to be root bound. Another sign that it might be root bound is when you start to see a bunch of leaves turning yellow. Now, the reason why this happens is when it becomes root bound, like those roots start encircling the pot, it basically suffocates itself, so it doesn't allow moisture to reach the entire root ball, and obviously the plant just gets really, really dry and it starts to shed its leaves. So obviously I don't see any yellow leaves on the plant. Now, sometimes you may get yellow leaves lower on the plant here, and for my situation, I have part of the plant in natural light and then the other half in or underneath a grow bulb. Now, when you start to see yellowing leaves, like these ones right here, it might just be a sign that it's not getting enough light and it'll drop these lower leaves. But you can see these newer ones up top here are very healthy and vibrant green. So the 3 main reasons why your plant is getting yellow leaves or dropping its leaves could be from overwatering, which could be also from an improper soil choice. It's just holding on to moisture for too long. If your plant has a root problem, so that can be overwatering, again, kind of leads back to the soil, or maybe you're watering too frequently, or if your plant is not getting enough light. Those are the main reasons why the leaves turn yellow and start to drop on a fiddle-leaf fig. So what I normally do is a couple days before I repot a plant, or if I know I'm going to be repotting a plant, I will give it a good thorough soaking. And I do that for a couple reasons. One is I like to have the plant in its healthiest conditions, so I'll give it a couple days for those roots to soak up the moisture. That way it's not dehydrated. I am a chronic underwater, and that can lead to stress to the plant as well. The other reason you want to water beforehand, or you can water beforehand, is if you have a very compact soil, that just kind of loosens it up and makes it easier when it comes to breaking up the soil, removing the soil, that kind of thing. Now, there is going to be probably difference of opinions if you should water before or after. Now, you absolutely can water after, and I do it quite frequently as well. So the main component is just help to settle the soil so the plant is a little bit more stable in the soil, and then of course it just rehydrates the roots. So if you're going to water after you do a repot, just make sure that the plant needs to be watered and it just isn't sitting in soggy soil. You don't want to kind of like water it twice, if that makes sense. Now, with that being said, as you can see, this soil is pretty dry, and the main reason why I didn't water before is because it is not compact, so I can pretty much just shake the soil off and then I'll put it in something new. Now, back to the point of not upsizing the pot. So this, like I said, is about a 13-inch pot. I just don't have enough space to go up to like a 15-inch or something like that. So what you can do is, obviously we'll see once I take this out of the pot. I haven't looked at the roots yet, but if it's severely root bound, you can do a root prune. Now, I'll show that once I take it out of the pot. So I'm just going to get things set up and let's pop her out. I gave the pot a good couple whacks. Now I'm just going to pull it out and let's bring it in nice and close here. Let's see what we got. Okay, so it is more root bound than I thought it was going to be. So this is one massive root ball, and you might be asking yourself, well, where did all the soil go? Now, over time, if you have drain holes that are large enough and you water it, it just kind of flows out the bottom without you even realizing. But yeah, this is one big spongy root ball. Now there's a couple ways that you can tackle this. I do have a root rake. I'll be scraping away some of the soil at the top and then kind of along the sides, just loosening up that root ball so it can be exposed to more of the new soil once I get it in. Or you can take this utility knife and safely remove about 1/3 of the root ball. So I'm going to do that first just to show you. I'm going to slice off a little root patty, and then I will use my root rake just to kind of loosen up the rest of the root ball so that when I put it in some fresh soil, it can rejuvenate the root ball, and then it'll send out some of the like little secondary roots, and that way it can promote new growth lower in the pot, and it'll just expand its root system until again it becomes root bound, and then you can just keep repeating that process, keeping it in the same size pot. Now over time this might stunt the growth of the plant, so if you have limited space in a certain area, this is a good way to keep it in the same pot but also limit the overall growth long term. I know this seems quite aggressive and harsh, but it's not going to kill the plant. It does have, you know, obviously a sizable root system, so removing 1/3 will not do any harm. It's going to help the plant get new roots. So I'm going to just slice in, like I said, to about 1/3 of the root system. It's kind of tough when it's angled like this because I don't want to break off any branches or leaves, so it might be a little uneven. It doesn't have to be exact, so just slice away at the roots, and be careful obviously when you're cutting that you don't slice your finger or something like that, so that would not be good. So just keep going through until you have a good chunk of root patty. And here's what we're left with. There's actually quite a bit of roots, more on the exterior as opposed to the interior of the plant there. So you can see I've chopped off about like 1/3 of the roots. This I'll just discard into the compost, as you don't need that. And at one point I was wondering if I was going to see some rocks, but I did put rocks in the bottom of my pots like years ago. Now for the root rake, I'm just going to just kind of tear away at the sides. I want to try and maintain like these larger roots. The little secondary fibrous ones, not a big deal if they break apart, but I want to keep like these longer ones. So I'm just going to lightly pull away at some of the soil. I'm not going to do the entire plant, but just so some of those encircling roots can untangle a little bit, and maybe a little bit at the top here as well. So the soil is not like hard or compact, but it definitely needs a refresh. So I'm just going to keep rotating it and just kind of going along the sides. Oop, it's falling off the pot. Maybe something like that, and then just a little bit more on this side, and that should be sufficient. I'm not going to stress this plant out any further. After I'm done this quick root prune, then I'm going to get my new soil set up. So this is what I'm left with. Nothing encircling, and it just has nice exposure to the root system so that when I put it in new soil, it'll entice those roots to start to search out into the new soil and hopefully continue with the new growth and stems and leaves and all that kind of stuff. Now for the soil mixtures, I'm going to try like a mix of two. So the VeryPlants aerated mix, this is a nice chunky mixture. It's got lots of bark, perlite, leca. Yeah, it's just a nice airy mixture, but in my experience, fiddle leaf figs like to be a little bit more on the damp side. They don't like to dry out really fast, so I'm going to be adding in just some of this ProMix premium potting soil, so it'll be like a 50-50. So I'll try that out. This is going to provide good drainage and airflow. This will provide some moisture retention, and as you can see, there's some perlite in there as well. Now I do have a little bit of an issue. My big container for soil mixing, I'm using it for another project right now, so I'm going to have to resort to this little trick-or-treat bucket. I'm just going to put in half of this here first. Just kind of measure it out a little bit. That looks to be about half. And then I'll dump in half of this one, and then I will mix it up. Of course, it's going everywhere. So it's going to look something like this, which I think I'm pretty happy with. It's a nice balance between the two. Now, in a lot of videos, I see people wearing gloves. Leave a comment down in the comment section there. Do you wear gloves when handling soil? So I've always wondered that. I don't. I get in there, I get dirty, and then I go wash my hands afterwards. But that should be pretty good for the fiddly fig. So now I got a pretty good base layer at the bottom. I'm just going to plunk it in now, like so. I think that's probably, maybe I'll add a little bit more just at the bottom there, bring it up a little bit higher. That way there's a nice base for those new roots to grow in. And I'm not going to pack it down either. I think that looks quite a bit better. Now I'm just going to fill in some of the soil along the edges here. Now this kind of seems like a waste of time putting one in like each of these small buckets and then mixing it in the pail. I don't want to end up with a large amount left over. So yeah, that's why I'm doing it separate in these pots, and then I just feel like I'm mixing little potions into one pot. So a little bit like this, a little bit like that, a little bit like this, and then it kind of mixes itself. I guess if you can see what I'm doing here. Add a little bit more. Mix it in, and then presto. And then I just have it so I can just kind of dump it in like that. I can spread it around to the sides and just kind of tap it, or you can push it down, making sure that that entire root ball is covered right to the bottom. Okay, that looks pretty darn good. Now, thankfully, I do have a garden hose in my basement. You can see it's going right into my bathroom right there. So I'm going to take this over to the shower. I'm going to soak the soil, let it settle. And if there are any areas where it's dropped, then I can just add in a little bit more of the soil. And then I'm just going to clean up my mess. So I gave it a quick soak. Now I'm just going to spray off the leaves, just making sure it's clean. Like that. I'll let it drip down into the soil. Okay, here's the finished product. I'm actually really happy with the soil type, the aeroid mix, as well as the potting mix. Now, the last thing I want to mention is if you use a commercial potting mix or potting soil, a lot of times they will have fertilizer kind of pre-mixed in it. So this one says it feeds up to 9 months. So you don't have to add any extra fertilizer into your mix. Otherwise, you're going to get some fertilizer burn for sure. So just make sure you read the package. So this is where I have the plant. I just done my upstairs dining room area. This is an eastern facing window. There's a house right there as well. So it does get some direct light in the morning. And then I have it underneath this Barena grow light, and it seems to be loving it. So I'm really happy with how the repotting process went. And obviously I'll be providing some updates down the road. I just got it kind of sandwiched in between my Wally Grow thing here for my orchids. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I do have some discount codes in the description of this video for VeryPlants, as well as a couple grow light brands. Go check those out if you want to save a little money. So otherwise, I think that's going to be pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching all my videos. Take care, everyone. Bye.